Chapter 10 of Gypsy Rose's book, My Time to Stand, or more like My Time to Lie, because that's all that we have got out of this. Now, I've tried to record this chapter a couple of times, and for some reason, like, TikTok's not complying with me, so what the hell, dude? So this is the third time I am trying to do this chapter, and this one's called Meeting Nick. So she's going to go into detail how she met Nick and how their story had started. And, oh boy. Again, we have no accountability, no real credibility to any of this. So she goes in and she states that she had met Nick on a Christian dating for free website. Well, that's what it's called. And this had happened on October 12th of 2012. She goes in to state that her profile picture that she had used for this site was of her in a prom dress while posing with a rose. Wow. And she was laying across a couch. She stated that she was at this point trying to discover herself and trying to figure out who she was and what she wanted to do with her life. And then that had came to a screeching halt when she had met Nick, and he had sent her a wink. You can tell the hostility that's coming through with this chapter. She stated that he was interested in her because she had put in her bio that she was into sci-fi and fantasy and was wanting to give her virginity up to her husband. If you are not looking for some type of sexual attention and everything, why would you put that in your bio? Why would you want to be like, hey, look at me, guys, I'm a virgin, type of thing? Like, who does that? Like, nobody does that. And that's just screaming, I want someone to be sexual towards me. I want sexual talk. I want someone to basically praise me for being a virgin and all this, which we come to find out she wasn't a virgin when she had got with Nick and all of that. So what were you trying to do? It just doesn't make any sense to me. So Nick was apparently the first person that had made her feel pride or wanted, sorry Dan, sorry. I thought that you were that person, but I guess not. And I mean, after Nick, we're going to hear that Ryan was and Ken was, and I want to hear Matthew's story. Wherever you are, Matthew, I will pay you. I will pay for you to be interviewed by me. You understand? I want to hear your side of the story because I know that you are out there. She stated that Nick was the first person that she had told that she could walk. I'm sorry, Dan. I guess when you made her mad, you just didn't exist anymore. You don't exist. You just out there. You just whatever. And then all of a sudden, for whatever reason, the chapter turns very dark, and then all of a sudden you hear, and he was praising, and Nick would praise me for sucking the Japanese dilly dough. Girl, this is a book that you wrote for your child to read when she's, you corrected yourself and said when she's 18 years of age. Why would you even want your 18-year-old to read that? Like, I wouldn't want any of my kids at any age to read this crap, especially that. I don't think I'd want my kid to hear, and I was sucking that dilly dough, and he was praising me, and that's the only time I would feel special or feel loved was if he was giving me constant praisals. She goes on and says that if Nick wouldn't, or if she wouldn't refer to Nick as the master at all times, then there was issues, and that they would constantly be fighting and going back and forth with each other. That he had a poor view of BDSM, and what he felt that BDSM was just not accurate. Even though she states that he was the one who introduced all this to her, she would have never been into any of this if it wasn't for him. But we now know, and it's really weird that she wrote this in her book, even though like his appeals have came out and everything else, and it is documented that a trained professional or a trained doctor had reviewed all their videos, all their messages between each other, and that he had stated that both of them would go back and forth, one would be submissive, one would be dominant, and that they would take turns, and that Gypsy was the one who would be telling Nick when it was his turn to be either dominant or be submissive, and that she was the one that in fact introduced him to these role play situations, that he would act like he was kind of confused by them and didn't really understand a lot of what was going on. However, I'm not going to say that he wasn't into these things or anything like that. I'm just stating that this started with her, and that Dan had even came out and testified for Nick and stated that she had introduced these things to him as well, and that he could prove that. She would go on and say that he would make up BDSM rules as they would go, that they would, when they would continue, even though we now know that, or apparently due to documents of a doctor testifying against her, that she was the one who made the rules, and normally she would make them up as Ruby. She goes in and says that when he would degrade her, she would feel very uncomfortable, but that would be balanced out by the world that they had set up with good versus evil, which is what I stated. I don't know why she said it this way, but it's basically them taking turns being submissive and dominant. That this reminded her of the sci-fi movie she enjoyed, Gypsy. We know that this shit wasn't a sci-fi movie. We seen you cosplay as Anastasia Steele and take pictures, and how you had a love for 50 Shades of Grey. Like, bitch, what are you talking about? Like, I don't understand like where you're going with this. Like, sci-fi movie? What sci-fi movies do you know that is like heavy into BDSM? I don't know. You tell me. I have no idea. Drop a list in the comments. It goes on about how Nick is the only one who knew that she could walk. Sorry, Dan, you're not important anymore. You don't even exist. Once she writes you off, nothing that you guys did, nothing that you guys talked about, nothing. It never existed. You're completely wrote out, just like a shitty book or a shitty play. And for some reason in this chapter, she has to bring up the fact that she didn't have labored breathing at night, and that she had scars on both sides of her neck from unnecessary surgery. Why do we keep bringing this up? Why do you need to bring this up? Do you want us to believe this shit? Because the one way to tell if someone is lying is that they'll constantly add the same detail over and over because they want to influence the reader or whoever is watching that what they're saying is true. So if they continue to repeat then it kind of conveys that they are telling the truth. This is a manipulation tactic that a lot of abusers use, and this is not only her. This is actually documented. Look it up. Let's tell us that she's going under the knife again. Both of them lived in a very fantasy type world, and she said that Nick was very good at storytelling and that he was very detailed, that he was almost like an author, which I'll agree. I've seen some of his writing. He does write very well. He probably could write books. I mean, I would rather buy one of his books than this. Goes on about how in his storytelling that he has an evil brother that wanted to murder her, and the other one, himself wanted to protect her. So Gypsy, the main question I have about this before I end this, because we're going to do 2 parts. There's no way I can put more into this video besides this, but my thing is, with that situation, was this a story that you guys were creating together where you were in this fantasy world and that he was trying to protect you as a damsel in distress and that you guys were writing the story as you go? Because this is not considered abuse or him being crazy or psycho or anything else. This just looks like someone trying to write a story and you're a character in the story. You know what I mean? Just like the story that you created with this book. But we're going to go more into depth about this chapter in the next part.